Hey everybody, Z Garcia here. Welcome back to Talking Tower. I am here with my co-hosts, Rebecca, the better half, Thomason, and Mark, Walking Tower Street.
Indeed, that's Walking Tower, right? Yeah.
We're Talking Tower, you're Walking Tower.
I am.
Man walks everywhere. I think he's prepping to walk around the earth. Pretty sure.
I like it. Yesterday, I walked 10 miles before, to be topical, before we had Thanksgiving dinner. So
Nice.
That was good planning right there.
I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving and a merry Black Friday.
Yes.
And today we're going to be talking about how to teach games. But before we do that, we're going to get to that in just a minute. First, we're going to do, of course, our over-under, as we do at the beginning of every episode. So here we go. We're going to give you a little pop culture, this or that, and I want you both to tell me what you think. Is this something that is not a big deal? Do you think they should have been doing it, earlier? Is it something that's untapped? All of that stuff. So we're going to start off with video game remakes, HD, remastered, this and that. Mark, I'm going to go to you first. Is this something that you think is necessary, or are they doing too many of them? What's going on with
Yeah, so my perspective on this might be a little different than folks, because I am all about it. If I want my old classic games or any of those games I used to love, I want to play them in my theater room. And once you play on a 120-inch screen, it's hard to go back to a 20-inch screen or something smaller, a handheld device or whatever. So I am all about the HD upscaling, even if it's upscaling, so it looks clean and playable on the big screen. So I am all for it, absolutely.
Okay, Rebecca, for those of us that don't own our own theater rooms, what do you think?
How do you know I don't? Oh, well, no, I don't. I have that little nostalgia thing, too. I got to be honest. Yeah. I know that they can go a little crazy and grab money. I mean, I'm like, sometimes I can't necessarily tell much difference between HD and the other stuff. Okay.
Right.
But it's kind of cool to release some old game and be able to play it on, your newer console or whatever, and just be able to relive that game. I'm a big nerd for that. I think it's fun. So, okay, they're making money on the side, of course, but, whatever. I like it.
I think I like that, too. I think my issue comes more from re-releasing a game that literally just came out in the last console generation.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like, if they put out a game that came out in 1994, it's like, okay, fine, I get it. You've, all new graphics, all reworked, 60 frames a second, blah, blah, blah. But when it just came out on like PS3 and you're reissuing it for PS4, that seems like just a cash grab. I'm not, and then like you said, you look at the difference between the graphics of one and the graphics of the NES, and they're like, oh, better lighting effects and the sure, barely. I mean, I can barely tell. So. I think I'm less enthused about it than you two are.
Yeah, well, definitely for that level. I'm thinking more stuff like, back in the LucasArts days, Full Throttle. That they recently, I guess in 2017 they redid Full Throttle. And it was so awesome because it's like fully much more animated, I should say. The animation is clean, you don't have all the jagged edges, so things like that.
Yeah, and they just re-released, or they're about to, the Grim Fandango again.
Oh my goodness, no way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's coming.
Oh, wow. That's good stuff. Yeah, I'm with you, though, with the newer stuff. Okay, I don't know. I'm kind of still annoyed that they don't make things backwards compatible anyway. I'm one of those people. I'm like, I want to be able to play my old stuff. I don't know. So, re-releasing them, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, moving from like 360 to Xbox One, that's not really a big update.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. All right, next up. Live action remakes of Disney classics. They've been doing these things now. We've got Aladdin coming, we've got Lion King coming, we already had the Jungle Book. So I'm going to Rebecca on this one first. I know you got the little ones at home. Rebecca, how do you feel about these?
We're kind of mixed because I don't know. I loved the classic cartoon, and to relive and watch those, I think is fine. And I don't know. I get the huge money grab vibe from this, honestly. We were kind of meh about Cinderella and this and that, when we first saw it. I don't know. That's my answer to that. So
all right.
I don't know. I'm not crazy about them. Although I did see the graphics of how Simba's going to look, and that was pretty beautiful. I gotta be honest. That looked pretty cool. but at the same time, I'm like, I like watching the old cartoons. So, meh.
Yeah. Mark, what do you think?
It's funny because my family, they have Beauty and the Beast on rotation constantly now, where the cartoon they didn't do that with. They
Really?
still
Wow.
enjoyed it, right?
Yeah.
But that movie, for some reason, resonated hugely with them. But I think it's going to be hit or miss. Like Aladdin, how can you possibly remake Aladdin without using Robin Williams' voice? I mean, I don't even want to see it because they're not going to just take that sound. Apparently they had hours of him just going on and on. They could have done all kinds of stuff with Genie and still use Robin Williams. So I think that's a huge fail for Aladdin. But the teaser for Lion King looks pretty neat. The animals look really cool, and I mean they have people back like James Earl Jones and so forth. So I'm more interested in that than Aladdin. So
yeah, definitely.
That's interesting. I think I'm the opposite. I think if it's solely animals and they're real now, I think it kicks up the realism factor too much, so that peril is too perilous and things are just too real.
Interesting.
If it's people, though, like when they did the Jungle Book, for example, I liked that if Mowgli, is that his name? Mowgli wasn't in it, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much because I need to see at least one real human being in it, and so Beauty and the Beast was, fine, okay, but I'm not so sure how I feel about The Lion King. It's just animals. There are no people in that cast,
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, wasn't animated already taking care of this? And also, some of these things, when you use real animals, at least me as a grown-up, I have to make that extra leap to go, it's fake, even though it looks really real. Animals getting hurt and stuff like that. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If it's animated, I can I can distance myself from that happening. So, I'm not sure.
The same with little kids, too, right? I mean, it's going to be one of those things where that's not one I would take the littlest one to, probably, because of the fact, that's, something to think about, too.
Yeah,
so.
and I think as far as people go, right, one thing that does bug me is like in Beauty and the Beast, Gaston, he looked puny. He's supposed to be big and buff, but the actor, he just doesn't live up to what the animated version was, right?
Yeah,
so I think that bugs me quite a bit, actually.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Next up, guys, books as inspiration for board games. So we just had the Reckoners, and there's been others before, Pillars of the Earth, games like that. So what do you think? Is this a good untapped idea that we have yet to mine, or is there more there that should be mined? Is this something we need to back off of a little bit? Mark, I'm going to go with you. What do you think?
Yeah, well, specifically for the Reckoners, oh my gosh, I love that first book, and holy cow, they totally captured the thematic essence of that first book in that game. I mean, you feel like you're playing the book, and I just thought it was phenomenal. But does that cover all book, just like with movies and things, it doesn't, the IPs don't always translate in board games, right? So, that one is a great one to mention because they did such a good job, but that's not always the case,
Yeah, my concern there would be that, how when they make a movie out of a book, a lot of people are like, well, the book was better. And that's largely true, probably, but that's because the book was more.
Yes.
It's not necessarily that it was better. It was just, they have to leave very large chunks of that book on the floor to make a movie. When it comes to board games, that's compounded. There's no way for it to not be. You are going to be using that book probably as the faintest of inspirations. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so is that just setting yourself up for frustration if you are a fan of that source material?
Right.
Where if you are making a board game about, Stephen King's Dark Tower series, how much of that could you possibly put in the board game to the point that if I'm a fan of that series, I'm just going to feel like you didn't do enough with it, as a publisher or as a designer. So that's kind of how I feel about it. Rebecca, what do you think?
Well, I think there's kind of a line there. I think books are a fantastic source for ideas and inspiration. We do that for movies and everything else anyway. But I think we need to balance a line here, again, with IPs a little more carefully with books. I think something like Pillars of the Earth did it right because they used it as a framework. But I don't have to read the book to enjoy that game.
Right.
It's kind of cool to go and play that game and to say, oh, I recognize this character, whatever. If you want to, that's great. It's flavor, though. That's it. And it's not, again, essential. But they took great ideas and they did something cool in a game with it. But I'm not going to go and say, oh, this reminds me of this book. I'm not going to do the opposite because of that. I mean, it took some great ideas, but I'm not saying I got a book reading experience from it. I think anybody that tries to do that is going to fail horribly.
Yep.
Right.
So,
right.
I think if they're really careful, they can do some great things with it. I mean, good grief. Look at all the wonderful ideas in literature. So
Oh, yeah. I mean,
definitely untapped in my
and
book.
obviously you get things like the Batman games, right, where it's not so much about the story, more about the characters, and you could do more things like that as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but Batman's easy.
Yes,
like,
it
I'm
is.
talking like, no one knows unless you've read the books who the cast of the Reckoners is.
True, but
it's not the Flash and Batman and Mickey Mouse.
True.
Those people know.
Yeah, but I had, friends and Anne and Randy who haven't read the books who loved
Wait,
them.
is Randy not a friend? Is that what just happened?
This is true,
friends
right?
and Randy? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry,
indeed.
Randy.
Randy.
But they haven't read the books and they loved the Reckoners. So I don't think it's a prerequisite to know the book in order to play the game. So
No, it's true.
Sure,
It's true.
sure.
Yep.
All right, we got a couple more things here, but I'm going to go ahead and skip them, guys.
Okay.
We'll leave these for next time,
Sounds
okay?
good.
Let's go ahead and dive into how to teach games. So, we're going to start off actually with a question from one of our viewers here. This is from Scott Chrisley, and he asked us, how do you prepare to teach games? He was talking about having some sort of anxiety about worrying to prepare for that. So, let's start there. How do you prepare to teach a game? And actually, before we even do that, let me ask you both. Are you normally the ones teaching a game if you find yourself in that situation?
it varies greatly for me, and it depends again who is here. So Randy really likes to teach games, so I let him do it. But it varied. It's greatly varied. So.
Yeah, I know, small confession, the teacher does not like to teach games that much unless I really know the games a lot. Hunter loves to teach games, so I'm not going to take that from him. That's like one of his favorite things to do when we start a new game, too. So I'm more than happy. Yeah, I get a little bit of an anxiety about it, too, because I know I'm going to forget something.
Right.
So, yeah, it's not my go-to thing.
Okay, so how do you prepare, then, to teach games? Rebecca, I'm going to start with you since it seems like you teach less, or teach games less. So if you know you're going to be teaching a game, how do you prepare for that?
Oh, I read. I go through and read the rule book, and if I have time, which a lot of times if I end up being the teacher, it's kind of on the fly, but if I have time, I'll play the game and make sure I'm familiar with it. Because once I'm familiar with the game, I feel confident I'm not going to forget something because I'm like, I'll just visualize going through the turns or whatever. If it's a complicated game, it's going to be with, I do something like go to the Watch It Played or one of those other videos, the how-to gaming rules, those things, so that I see everything. I love those.
So what do you mean by play it first before you teach?
If it's a game, like if I'm teaching to my gaming group at school, if my kids, I want to make sure it's a game that I know, because that's, again, I have an anxiety about teaching a game I don't know, because I don't know how it's going to go over and things like that.
Right.
So I don't like to teach a new game that's new to me. So I try to play the game first.
Well, I do something, and I'll go to you, Mark, in a sec, but I do something very similar in which I, quote-unquote, play the game, as in I set it up, and just mess with it for a few rounds, just by myself, even if I'm playing two-handed or three-handed, whatever.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of see how it would go. And that's, helps me visualize where things are going to go, how turns are going to flow, that sort of thing. So I normally don't get to play a game before I'm going to be teaching it, because I'm the teacher. So, but I do like to fake play it, just to see how it's going to work out.
Cool.
And that really helps me. It translates what's going on from the page to the table. As I'm reading setup, I'll set it up.
Yes.
I'll do all those things to help me solidify the ideas therein, So, Mark, what do you think?
Exactly.
How do you prep?
100% the same. I fake play it every single time. Even if I know the game and I know tomorrow we're going to play, I'll set it up, just make sure I remember things. I'll throw out and do a couple just random turns, or like put pieces in like where they might be in the middle of the game, just so I remember how to do one thing. I always, again, even if I know the game, I skim the rules the night before or an hour before people come over or something. It's just, it again, like you said, it helps solidify. Oh yeah, that's how you do that. That's how you do that. And then, but there's a whole set of games that I have never read the rules, but others have taught me that we play like in a group that I know I can't teach because of that same fact that I have not visualized it myself. Right? I mean, I can play when we play, but I don't have that core feeling of, oh yeah, I've done this. Yeah. I've done this myself. So those games I would not feel comfortable teaching without prep time, you know?
Okay, I get you. Okay, let's jump to this one. Do you guys have a one-sentence philosophy to teaching games? This is your, what you consider your mantra, when it comes to teaching games.
This one for me is the same as the do never never do question. So it's the whole thing. Don't read the rule book to everybody at the table.
Wow. Yeah. Sure.
That
kills a game dead, like very few things do.
That's the worst for me and my philosophy about don't just sit there and read it because people are not going to absorb that.
No. I mean, and I've often found myself having to play a game as I'm reading it from the rulebook. I don't prefer it. I would much rather not do that.
Right.
But if I'm doing that, the best thing you can do is read yourself a few lines and paraphrase.
Yes.
You just paraphrase the part you're actually utilizing from that.
And and visually show that as you paraphrase it. Oh, you do this, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Right. Because, I mean, the game, any manual is going to take a longer time to say everybody starts with a hand of 7 cards than you can say that.
Yep.
So read the thing and then go, okay, everybody draw 7, 2 wheat, 2 wood, and 2 glass over there. But boom, if you paraphrase it, it sounds natural. Right. You're not putting people to sleep or keeping them actively listening to reading takes a very active brain. I mean, a very engaged focus.
Yep.
And that's tiring.
Yeah.
People are going to check out.
So tiring. And I feel like if there's a couple bullet points that you want to read from, that's okay, but not whole paragraphs of things, right? So
yeah. Exactly.
Right. What about you?
I was going to say, my thing is tell me the goal of the game first. I get so tired when somebody goes in and like, okay, and then you take this piece and you're going to move over here and you're going to trade it in for this. And I'm like, why?
Yes.
I don't care. I don't understand. There's no context.
Yep.
Yes.
Why? Tell me why. Even if it's like, okay, the object of the game is to get the most victory points. That's great. I know that's most games. But how do you get those victory points? Okay, well, build from something, and just diving into the weeds kills me every time.
Definitely.
I agree 100% with that. And also, I mean, yes, while most games are about getting the most victory points, those victory points, prestige points, experience, whatever they're called in that game, mean something. Even if it's tenuous connection at best, they mean something.
Mm-hmm.
Your objective is to help build the cathedral the most. And therefore, that's what victory points mean. Oh, your objective is to deliver the most orders to your, patrons, whatever.
Right.
But there is something you are technically doing. It is not make victory points. Those are meaningless. That's a meaningless conversion of, whatever it is you're actually doing. So say that also.
Yes.
Don't just say the objectives to get the most victory points. True. I still don't know what that means,
Yeah.
You got to give me some context in there. So that's a great one. Start with the objective first, absolutely. This is another question from one of our viewers. This is from Mark McNair. He was asking, when you're teaching, do you just do rules and mechanics, or do you teach some basic strategy as well?
Well,
I know. Sorry.
I was going to say, back to what you were talking about, the objective, right? I always start with the thematic aspect of the game before I jump into anything at all. So they get the feel of what's happening, right? But then it is visually showing mechanics a lot. But it's not just say, oh yeah, you're going to move pieces. And, like I said, I'm actively showing on the board or with the cards. And that seems to help folks. But another thing about that is that it depends who is here, who I'm teaching to. It's going to be different.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. You hit the nail on the head there. I know for me, when it comes to that idea of just teach and then tell people how they might do well, that really depends on the people. I mean, big time.
Yep.
A lot of folks don't want to hear that.
Right.
A lot of people just want you to teach them the game, and they like the stumbling along the way to figure out a game.
Yeah.
That can be fun.
Yep.
And some people, probably, gamers that are not as much of a gamer. I don't want to say necessarily non-gamers. They sat down to play with you. But, so, folks that don't play as many games, perhaps, or might find themselves slightly intimidated at the table, another thing to watch out for.
Yep.
They probably want a little direction.
Yes.
You might want to help them out with a little hand holding. Don't walk them through the game.
Yep.
But if you're clearly feeling some resistance, help them out. Throw them a line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Early in the game, you're probably going to want to just build up your resources. This is what I did last time. Something like that might be a good idea.
Yep.
Just, to ease them into it a little bit. Rebecca, what do you think?
I was thinking the exact same thing you were saying, too, and mentioning that especially a game where you've got a mixture of people that have played the game before and people that haven't played the game. It's good sometimes to mention, it really works well if you start by hoarding some resources first or something. You might mention a few things like that just to keep the playing field a little bit level, because you've all experienced that game where the new people get just destroyed because they don't know the game or the strategies. And so sometimes you want to at least feed them a little bit to help them get a jump start on the game. And then, I think it's just a straight up, this is teaching in general, not just board games, but teaching. You need to know your audience and you need to adapt it accordingly. So if you've got people that need extra information, give it to them. You want the best experience possible. You want the best outcome. So you're going to, cater to your audience. Whatever you need.
Yeah, speaking of that, this is one thing. I'll just jump in here with one tip. I always spot people mishandling this a little bit. And again, it's an audience thing. You explain something. Like, okay, so on your turn, you can convert as much gold as you want for 2 glass. Cool. And then immediately that's followed by, so on my turn, I could turn in 2 gold and get 4 glass. Or I could turn in 6 gold and get a 12 glass. That sentence, a lot of gamers want you to skip that.
Yeah.
Because they got it.
Yeah.
You said 1 gold for 2 glass. I got it. As much as I want, cool, done.
Yeah.
But it happens a lot, and I think it's a teacher thing, because you're like making sure you're basically going, get it? You got it? Okay, cool. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yep.
But after you do it once or twice and you see that look in their eye, like, right.
Yeah.
Like, we got it.
Move on.
I play a lot of games. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then back off of the example.
Yep.
Try to avoid those. Now, some people are going to need them, and you want to again make that point very clear so that it sits in there. But it's one of those little repetitive things that happens and compounds over you teaching for 15 minutes.
Right.
That gets old.
Yes.
Yep.
It's like, no, I got that thing. Stop. Every time, on your turn, discard cards and then redraw 2 more than you discarded. Don't tell me now that if I discard 2, I draw 4. I got that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just one of those things. All right, so let's see. What should you not do as you are teaching games? Let's talk about some of those things. Let's go with Mr. Street. You teach more.
Yes.
So why don't we start with you?
Again, the starting thing I never do is read from the rule book. It just, again, people turn off.
Yes.
And
What
I
else?
try, and the thing is, like you said, when you have that mixed group of folks that are seasoned versus new, I usually give them heads up that, those people are going to need extra time. So if you need to step away, let me walk through them on a couple turns first, right? But so I try to make it easy for everybody, right? So the other things I never do is jump around. Like, okay, this is the end of the game. This is the middle of the game. Oh, now this is what you do at the beginning of the game. No.
Yes.
You gotta be.
Big time.
It's got to be linear, right? Here's the beginning to the end and how it works. So that's probably the big.
Absolutely.
That's the big thing. It needs to be a progression. It needs to make sense.
Absolutely, 100%. Rebecca, what do you
Yep.
got? What do you
I was
not
thinking
do
the-
in teaching?
I was thinking the exact same thing, is that you don't jump around, keep it linear, go through, and don't. Also, the opposite too, like we were talking before, don't over explain, but don't assume that everyone understands how everything
Yes.
works. Because
Yes.
sometimes, especially those heavier games, if you start to go into the weeds and stuff, and then you're like, okay, we're good, and keep moving on, and then everyone's like, well,
Why would I do that?
how do we do a turn? Yeah, what just happened here? Because then you're going to end up going through, and your first round's going to be a nightmare because everyone's like, okay, I don't even remember how this works, you know.
Right.
And I hate that kind of stuff. That's really rough. And again, we already talked about it, but tell me the object of the game. Don't just dive in. That's such a huge thing. That's my biggest pet peeve.
Yeah.
I think I'm right
Especially
there
with
with you.
heavy
I
Yep.
think I'm exactly
Yeah.
right there with you. That's the thing for me. When I sit down to play a game, the first thing
Yeah.
out of your mouth should be, this is what I'm trying to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
I need to know what I'm shooting for.
Yep.
Then back up and tell me what's going on. I'm a big
Yeah.
believer in the top-down philosophy of teaching,
Right.
and that is, you tell me what I'm trying to do, and then you give me a real, wide angle look at what the game looks like, and then what a turn maybe looks like. So you're
Right.
gonna, your turn, you're gonna draw cards, you're gonna make resources, and then you're gonna, take actions to turn those resources into victory points and play those cards. Cool. I don't know how to
Well, and
play
part of
from
that
that
too-
sentence
yeah.
whatsoever, but I have
Yeah.
a general structural idea now.
Yeah.
And then
Well, and part
one
of
level
that too,
closer and so on, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just going to say, too, part of that is sometimes you may need to almost do a mock round or show, like you said, when
Absolutely.
you are prepping to teach. I like that idea of doing just a mock round yourself, showing everyone, okay, this is how we maneuver through the board.
Yep.
This is how we're doing this. We're going to go through here first. See, we have a cheat sheet. This is how you read
Yep.
this. This is how you interpret it.
Yeah.
So that now everyone's got that, and they can just go off of that and go
Yeah.
instead of asking every time, okay, I don't know what we're doing. I like that. And visual things, hands-on.
Makes a big
It works
difference.
for
Yeah.
so much. Yeah, it's
And what I
huge.
do with new
That's
people a
great.
lot is we'll say, okay, the first three rounds of this game, we're going to play with our cards face up, and this is why I'm doing this
That's
right
cool.
now, and then we'll start fresh after that and start the game. And so they get a feel of, wait, why are you doing that? Why are you grabbing gold? Because my card here shows that I'm going to need gold at the end of the game. Things like that. And so they have that visual concept in their head, right? Again, more hands-on.
And that kind of helps teach a little strategy too.
Yes.
And that without, if you do it that way, you do it without telling someone, "Oh, you should do this turn," which also is a bit of a pet peeve for me.
Yeah.
Never mind in
Yeah.
cooperative games,
Right.
you should definitely not do that. But just in any game, when someone does not explain to you why you should do something, but instead tells you that you should do it, that's a big difference, folks. Don't do that.
Right.
Okay? Don't play for me. Help me play, but helping me play is not playing for me. Like, you helping me with the groceries might be you just carrying the groceries, not explaining how to do it, but that's not the same thing in a board game.
Right.
You need to explain how, not just do it.
Indeed.
All right, cool. So let's turn our our focus a little bit here towards the learners at the table, the people sitting there being taught to. What should those learners, in your opinion, do and not do? I'm going to start with Rebecca. What do you think is a good tip, not just if you're teaching, but if you're sitting there learning?
The big one, put away your cell phone.
It sounds
Pay
like
attention to
it
it.
sounds like a day at school for you.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? Learn from experience. You know what? My students are usually better than my adult gamer friends. I'm just going to say that right now.
Yeah, it happens. It happens.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yep.
But yeah, paying attention. Sometimes it's easy, especially if you haven't seen people in a while, side chatter and this and that, and then your rules teacher is already frustrated because they've had to repeat themselves, and
Yes.
just that gets really old. So just get through the rules, we chat while we're playing, and all that kind of good stuff. But the rules are important. If you don't know what you're doing, you can't play. So
We're going to create chaos down the line, right?
Yes.
That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
problem.
Absolutely. So
Yeah, and speaking of chaos, one of the things that really bugs me from learners, they're like, oh, no, just start. I'll figure it out. And then every third word, they're asking a question.
They're like, nope.
You're like,
yeah.
Sure.
Just let me give you some basics first. No, let's just play. I'll figure it out. All right, well.
Yeah, that's problematic.
Like,
that means you're teaching in chunks later
Yes.
on to an audience that's having a hard time focusing on what's going on at that moment. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to need to learn some rules, folks. I mean, again, one of my pro tips is, I don't know if it's a pro tip. One of my tips is definitely, to gloss over as a teacher.
Yeah.
Like, if there's exceptions to rules that are not necessarily integral, might not even come up, don't teach that, okay? Just gloss over that. But you got to do some teaching, I mean, people need to know some general idea of how to move the game forward.
Yeah.
So, yes, absolutely. That's a big one, Also, if you are learning a game, and this is one I often come up against, and you have questions that crop up in your head, that's fine. Go ahead and ask them, as long as they are about what I am currently teaching.
Right.
Okay, if I am putting out, there are 5 resources on the table, and I start with wood over here, and I say, so the wood, you're going to be making some of that, and you are going to be spending it to build houses, as many as you want to. If you then go, okay, so is there a limit to how much of that wood I can have? Nope, there's no limit. Great, that's a fine question. Don't then go, so what about the gold? What do we build with the gold? I'm getting to the gold.
Right.
Clearly. But don't try to get ahead of the teaching sequence. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
There are shortcuts, but none that person teaching you probably hasn't thought about. You know what I mean? So that's going to derail some things if you try to jump around. In fact, you are sort of asking for a bad rules teach if they're going to start jumping around just to accommodate you. So definitely ask questions, but about what's going on or tying it to something that already was talked about. Not ahead. Don't ask ahead.
And when you do have questions, be more specific than, hey, so on your turn you're going to draw 2 cards. I don't understand. And what they mean is, I don't understand what these cards do. So things like be a little more specific about what you're asking.
Sure.
Yeah. Well,
that's interesting. Okay, I like that. Anything else that players or learners should or should not do? Anybody else?
Those people that try to power game as they're learning the rules.
Yes.
That always, it's like, so if I do this and this and this and this, it's like, well, we're not min-maxing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
We're trying to make sure we know how to get the game going.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, I don't come across that very often, but thankfully, but there is, there's an element of that. And sometimes, and I get where you want to try to figure things out and start to strategize that, but that's not the time to interrupt the rules for that sort of thing.
Yep.
Right,
I think it kind of ties in with what you were
I
saying.
imagine I'm not like that largely, but I imagine it must be a very hard thing to stop yourself from doing if you are someone that must get in there and crush the opposition. But try. Everybody else is learning, as are you. If you don't win this one, it's okay.
Right.
You just, destroy your opponents the next game.
Right.
Get through that first game. It's like writing, right? What's that number 1 rule about writing if you're a creative writer? Write.
Right.
Don't then, write the first sentence and edit it right then and there and go, oh, I don't like that word choice. No. First pass, just get it on the paper.
Yeah.
Do that
Rough
next
draft
game.
exactly right.
You can do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's a big one, I think, when you're learning games, is just get through it, figure out the flow, but don't try to necessarily destroy everybody else. All right, so let's talk about some tips here to wrap up. So I already talked about glossing over details if you don't find that they are necessary to that first play experience, or it's simply convenient to mention it when it comes up, as long as you're not going to have that player who's like, well, you never said that, so I can't win now.
Yes.
Don't. That's a tip for you players. Don't do that. Second tip I've got here: adjust the teaching to the players. Again, some folks don't want to hear that example. Don't want to hear every little reiteration of what you just said. They can handle without. So plow through. They got it.
Yep.
And then also, this is my last tip, and I'll turn it over to you guys now if you've got some good ones. Use the theme to help you teach if it helps to cement player choices. I always try to do this. Some themes don't help. So ignore it.
Yeah.
On your turn, you go and you got 2 wood, and you turn that wood into a house because the game says you do. Or you could take wood and turn it into gold. That doesn't make sense, I know, but you sold it. Whatever, just move on. But some games do. In some games, you are doing things that help. So one example is when I play Imperial Settlers. In Imperial Settlers, when you attack someone's building, they'd lose that building. You steal some stuff from it. But then that player who got attacked gets 1 wood. It's always 1 wood.
Right.
There's no real solid
Reason
or thing to remember.
Right.
There's nothing to remember. So what I always say when I teach is, so they're going to attack you, they wreck your building, but from the wreckage, you recover some lumber.
Yes.
And no one ever forgets.
Yeah.
Everybody always remembers, oh, you wrecked my building, I get to take back some wood from this burnt out husk. Done.
Yep.
That's what I'm talking about, right? So use the theme to make that little leap, to help somebody remember, oh, when that happens, I get this because thematically, that's what's going on. And that's going to save you a world of hurt and reiteration of things.
Yep. That's my biggest one. I use that one all the time because I love theme, right? So I mean, it clicks with me. So I hope it clicks with others. And having that little bit of storytelling adds so much to the game. So that's a big one. And again, going back to what I talked about before, for new players, playing with cards face up to help them learn is a big one for me. And even if that's not starting the game, hey, we're just going to do this for 3 rounds, and then we're going to start for real.
Okay.
I think it adds a lot. So
it does. It really does.
Rebecca, what about you?
Well, I was just thinking about what you were talking about earlier, and Hunter does that, and I really like it. If he's teaching a game and there's something that it's not going to change the game, but like you said, is something that you can gloss over, he'll specifically say, okay, when we get to this certain point, there's stuff that's going to happen. I'll explain it later. But there's no reason to explain it right then. He lets you know that there's something coming up that's going to, happen, and we're going to learn about it. But it's not a, you need to strategize for this now kind of thing.
Right.
So you learn all of the information you need, but you don't get bogged down in a bunch of details while you're trying to figure out how the game works. And I really like that. And that's something that I aspire to do when I'm teaching. Sometimes I'm not as good at figuring that out right away if I'm not as familiar with it. But it's really helpful learning. And it makes it so much smoother to get into the game. You're like, okay, I know how this works now. I know something's coming up. I'm ready.
I like that. I like that a lot because it keeps the players from feeling blindsided. So you warn them, there's more to this phase when it happens, but I'm not going to tell you yet. Don't worry about it. So they know it's coming. It's not like that. Everybody's had that game experience where someone who taught the game halfway in goes, oh, did I forget to mention that, gold is a wild resource also? Because I'm about to turn in 5 gold for all the victory points. It's like, well, hold on. Come on. Like, you remembered as soon as it was convenient for you. And they really did, right? Don't blame them. They really did forget.
Yeah.
But if you tell someone something is coming, it helps them not be shocked when it arrives. You know?
Yeah.
So that's a big one. Thanos is coming, by the way.
Yes.
Don't be shocked when he arrives. Another thing that I'm sure you do, Rebecca, in school, because I did it when I was teaching, is adjust the teaching to the learner, but not just that. But when someone needs to be taught something again, you don't just say the same thing again.
No.
You spin it, right? Like you just say, you technically say the same thing again, but you spin it. If you taught a rule already, and that person has asked what it is that happens at the beginning of the round 3 times now, don't tell them the same thing you said
clearly
the first
time.
Spin it, yes.
You got to now say, well, okay, how do I tell them this thematically so they don't forget? Or how do I make this, how do I teach the same thing in a slightly different way, or give them a real world correlation, something so that it stays. It's clearly just they're having a hard time keeping the information because it's nebulous to them.
Right.
So give them a real world situation. Well, it's like when you do your taxes, you have to turn in the paperwork first. That's what you're doing here. You first need to turn in the card, and then you get the money. Done. Right? Whatever. That, you got to spin it if you're
Yep.
reteaching something that isn't sticking. So, anything else, guys? Any final tips or tricks to when it comes to teaching games?
Any final tips? So again, I think it comes back to me because I'm such a thematic guy. Storytelling to convey the mechanics of the game really helps solidify and show visually how that works.
All right, Rebecca.
I think go with the flow too. You know, it's okay to make mistakes, and if you do, just fess up, do them, move on. It's about playing games and having fun, and you want to make it as fun for you teaching as well as playing. So just go with it.
Yeah, actually, that does bring up one final thing I wanted to mention, which is if you're halfway through a game and you notice you've been doing something wrong the entire time, do you start doing it then? Do you just mention it to the other players, but say, let's finish playing without that thing? How do you roll with that?
Yeah, so it depends on what it is exactly. Like if it's like, oh yeah, we're supposed to take 3 cards, then we start taking 3 cards. But if it's something where it has made strategic difference throughout the game, we're just going to continue playing that way for this game.
Yep, 100% agree.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's the way to handle it. Just do that.
Yep.
You know, if you don't try to backtrack all that stuff, that's just going to lead to a bigger mess. That's going to lead to someone at the end winning and going, yeah, but did I really? Don't worry about that. Just keep playing. As long as everybody has the same rules the whole game, or if it's something you can, rectify from that point on and keeps everything feeling fair, right, at least,
yeah, absolutely.
then that's fine. But don't try to backtrack it. They're like, oh, well, you should have gotten like 4 more stone then for the last few rounds. So here's a bunch of stone, and I'm going to give you some random things. That's going to lead to people feeling like, really? Was I supposed to get that much? Or more? Or less?
Yeah.
Don't mess with that. So that's it, folks. Thanks for hanging out with us. I hope you learned at least one little thing, and definitely tell us in the comments some of your pro tips for how to teach games, or if you're someone who has taught games a lot, what do you like in the teacher, or what do you think is a good thing to do as the learner, as the person sitting there actually trying to absorb all this information. All right, next episode, we're going to see you in a couple of weeks or so, and the next episode is going to be about, culling, collections, things like that. We're calling it How to Let Games Go. That's going to be scary. That should be like a Halloween episode. It's terrifying.
Exactly.
It's terrifying.
Oh my gosh.
Let games go.
The separation anxiety is strong.
Horrible. Anyway, make sure you tweet your questions at @ZEE_Garcia with the hashtag Talking Tower. If you want to throw us any questions, we might fold those into the talking points for us. Again, How to Let Games Go. I'm Z Garcia. Got Mark Street right there. Say bye, Mark.
Bye, guys. See ya.
Bye. Have a good one, guys.
All right.
Later.
All right. And we are going to see you on the next one. Don't forget, hey, some people talk shop. We are talking tower, and we're Ghost. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.